أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We start this 22nd ISNA Education Forum by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and listening to the recitation from the Holy Quran. We have a young student from Hadi School of Excellence, Chicago. She is a student of 6th grade and she has given a beautiful recitation for our opening session. I request Sister Zainab Sayyed to start her recitation.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Zainab Sayed and I'm in 6th grade from Hadi School of Excellence. Today I'll be reciting for you the first 27 ayahs of Surah Rahman. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان رب المشرقين ورب المغربين فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يخرج منهما اللؤلؤ والمرجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان وله الجوار المنشآت في البحر كالأعلام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Zainab, for your
No, I can't take it in the car.
For your beautiful recitation from Surah Ar-Rahman of the Holy Quran. At this point, I welcome all the attendees of ISNA Education Forum, which is being held in collaboration with the Council of Islamic Schools of North America. Alhamdulillah, as you know, this is the 22nd Education Forum. Last year, we had a virtual forum, and this year, because of COVID, we are doing it again on a virtual platform. But inshallah, we are very hopeful that next year we'll be able to have an education forum in person. Now, the next speaker who is going to speak on behalf of ISNA, Brother Safa Zarzour, the president of ISNA, is well known to our Muslim teachers community. He has served as the chair of Council of Islamic Schools in North America, as Secretary General of ISNA. He is the founder of this education forum, with Sheikh Abdullah Idris, and he has done multiple things for Islamic schools, for ISNA and Muslim community in North America. I have a long bio, but I am trying to give very brief from his bio. He has a Juris Doctor degree from DePaul University School of Law, a master's in education from the University of Illinois in Chicago, and a bachelor's of science degree in mathematics from Arkansas State University. Professionally, he is the superintendent of Universal Schools located in Illinois and Indiana. He is the principal attorney of the law firm Zarzur Law LLC. He served as Secretary General of ISNA, as I mentioned earlier, as well as General Counsel and Chief Operation Officer of Zakat Foundation of North America, Chief Executive Officer of ICRA International Foundation, and served as adjunct law professor at Loyola Law College.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Mukhtar.
Brother Safa
We're
is
good,
the
we're
former
good.
chairman of the Council of Islamic Schools, former member of ISNA Majlis Shura. He's also current member of Majlis Shura as the president and member of the board of directors of Lake Institute on Faith and Giving, vice chairman of the Mosque Foundation and president of Syrian Forum USA. So this is a brief from Brother Safa's resume and bio. And now I request Brother Safa Zarzur to give his opening remarks for the 22nd ISNA Education Forum. Brother Safa Zarzur, welcome.
Jazakallah khairan, Brother Mukhtar, mashallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. I couldn't describe my happiness to be joining this forum on this 22nd annual of it. I still remember sitting down in a tiny restaurant in Chicago with Brother Shariq Siddiqui to plan the very first education forum in 1999, and then holding it in April of 2000. Alhamdulillah, it is an incredible feeling to be part of that journey from its beginning, and to see the education forum where it is today in its 22nd annual. And although on the one hand, one can bemoan the fact that COVID has prevented us from being together, I really believe that there's always a silver lining. There's no pure, evil, if you will. There's always something embedded in it. And in this case, I'm very gratified to realize that holding the education forum online has enabled so many of our beautiful Muslim educators around the globe to be with us, not only those who can attend in person, as in previous years. I know that we have people from South Africa, a place where I hold very dear and near to my heart, that I visited three times, all in the quest of advancing Islamic education, people from Great Britain, from Europe, from the Middle East, as well as from the States. So I'm grateful for that. And I believe, again, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts good in every trial, no matter what it is. And so I welcome everyone on behalf of ISNA. And as Brother Mukhtar said, I'm opening on behalf of ISNA, but I do claim CISNA as well. I am a former chair, and I have all the love for everyone who currently is serving on the board of CISNA, one of the most selfless group of people I know. Sister Laila Shatara, the president, who will speak after me, also is someone that I admire greatly, as well as the rest of the board members. What is special about Islamic education, what is special about this education forum, what is special about Islamic schools, particularly in English-speaking countries, to me, more than anything else, and there's a lot of things that are special about it, but what is most special about it is that it is one of the most truly organic, natural labor of love movement and effort that I've ever witnessed in any field. What I mean by that, 30 or 40 years ago or so, um, uh, when some of our community members, and I'm speaking specifically about the United States, but from my visit to Great Britain and South Africa, I gather that it's the same experience, in that those who started speaking about, and when I say 30, 40, I'm talking about the onslaught of a lot of schools happening together, because one can never, ever, ever ignore the experience in America, of our brothers and sisters in the African American communities who started Islamic schools as early as the 30s and the 20s. But if we want to talk about the big push that happened starting with the early 80s, those people who started it, really literally, they were called the crazies, because nobody believed that it is possible to put together a school, and the community had zero experience, and these people were motivated, and Allah is knows best, but they were all motivated by the fact that they worried about their children and the children of the community, and they felt that even though we don't have the experience, even though we may not have the resources, even though the majority of the community was skeptical and not even supportive in many places, they said, we're going to do it. We're going to open an Islamic school. And so you hear stories about sisters who have the foresight and the determination and the tenacity to open a school in their kitchen, in their basement. When the community is telling them, what are you doing? You're not going to get anywhere with it. Today, I can name at least 20, 30 places in this country where we have large Islamic schools with several hundred children that started literally in the kitchen of a sister on a lunch bench with her children and the children of her best friend, who usually also is called crazy at the time, who handed over her children to her to be taught, or even they co-taught those 7 or 8 or 10 children. So it's a movement that I believe is blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because there was no glory in it and nobody knew what's going to happen of it. And everybody thought the people who started it don't know what they are doing and are crazy. And little by little, it caught on. Little by little, people realized the absolute necessity for this effort. And you started having pioneers in the community who started latching on, and those schools started moving from kitchens to to the lunchroom in the masjid, or the basement of the masjid, to a special building that's built specifically attached to the masjid, to schools that stand on their own. And the movement, the blessed movement, continues. That's why it is so dear and near to my heart. I look at our educators, and to me, they're all some of the most selfless, hardworking people that I've ever seen in my life. Whether when I look at the board of ISNA, when I look at my fellow educators, and I continue to be thoroughly involved in education in my work, all of them are people that I just love dearly for the sake of Allah, and that I was connected to them purely by that. And through that, that is our love for Allah, our love for our community, our love for our future generation and our children. And so we meet for the 22nd annual. It's an amazing opportunity for all of us to learn, for all of us to network, albeit online, and inshallah ta'ala, each and every one of you is going to walk away with something that is really meaningful, that will enrich your experience, make you a better educator, inshallah ta'ala, and the movement continue. And I count myself very lucky to be part of it, and I hope and pray that you feel the same, and that all of us will continue to build each other, to teach each other, to improve the state of our Islamic education and our Islamic schools, and reach that point where they are the pride of the community, and they are the pride actually of society at large. And we are starting to see some of that, whether from the general private schools movement in America, for example, where ISNA as well as other Islamic education organizations have taken seats where their opinion is sought, where we are contributing positively even to the larger movement of Islamic and religious schools in America and in the world. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless you. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless this effort. Each and every person from the ISNA headquarters who who's taking care of all the logistics and the coordination and all the work, starting with our capable executive director, Brother Bashar Salim, my beautiful brother Mukhtar Ahmed, one of the most hardworking and humble people I've ever met in my life, as well as the committee, steering committee of this conference. And inshallah ta'ala, you will have a wonderful, pleasant experience and walk away feeling very good about joining and being a part of this beautiful, blessed movement of Islamic schools. Thank you, Jazakumullah khair, and we will talk and we will see you always, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Safa, for your beautiful welcoming remarks as well as the opening comments. The next speaker, according to our schedule, is Sister Leila Satara. She is the president of the Council of Islamic Schools in North America. She is not at this time available, so I'm requesting Sister Susan Labadi, who is the chair of ISNA Education Forum Program Committee, to give us a brief about the program, and as well as welcome our keynote speaker, Brother Habeeb Quadri, who will be speaking after this segment of the program. So I welcome Sister Susan Labadi. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. It's been my pleasure to work with this wonderful committee. And I also happen to be a board member of the ISNA organization. And ISNA, many people get confused with other organizations. So just to clarify, what we really work on is accreditation for Islamic schools. In particular, we're focusing on standards that relate to Quran, Islamic studies, and Arabic. We are also advocates for Islamic schools at the governmental levels of the federal government as well as state governments. We also work on professional development for boards. And I think that what we're offering is something that everyone should be a member of ISNA to get benefits. This last year, we've done many webinars calling to the cry that we needed to answer with regard to the COVID crisis and changing and how we're teaching our students. But going forward, we're really going to be focusing a lot more on board development. So we hope that you will check out our website, which we're upgrading, and become members of ISNA. Also, many of the people that have been on the programming committee are members of the ISNA board, and I wanted to give acknowledgement to all of the people who have shared, actually volunteered so much of their time to put together what I think is a really great program for you, and I hope you will agree. And so I would like to acknowledge them now. We have Brother Sadiq Al-Hassan, Shahida Ali Khan, Salah Ayari, Sufia Azmat, Thureya Bubatra, Magda El Salah, Azra Nakfi, Talat Pasha, Patricia Salahuddin, and Leila Shatara. All of these people will be participating as moderators, and some of them even presenting today as well as myself. And so I hope, inshallah, that you will enjoy what's coming in the next couple of days. Also, our keynote speaker is well known to many of you, and he has been a volunteer committee member also in the past. And really, I quote him as being an educator, a youth activist, and an author. So he's so busy, always doing so much. We really appreciate him giving his time to us today. He was also recognized in Washington, D.C. with the National Distinguished Principal Award from the National Association of Elementary School Principals. He has a bachelor's degree in teaching of history and a master's in school administration, and he works with the Harvard University Graduate School of Education Principal Center. In addition to his teaching and administrative experience in public and private schools, Habeeb has delivered hundreds of lectures throughout the United States, Canada, and abroad on Islam, society, and social problems confronting Muslim youth and the community at large. Habeeb generously shares his expertise also via his own educational consulting company called High Quality Educational Consulting. Mr. Quadri has conducted workshops for the U.S. Department of State, and he has partnered with ICRA Foundation to initiate the first National Islamic Studies Standardized Test and National Islamic Studies benchmarks. Additionally, he has authored and published several books as he continues his mission to help Muslim youth. May I present to you Habeeb Quadri.
Brother Habeeb, you're on mute.
Due to technical difficulty, I just wanted to make sure everyone was paying attention to me, right? So that was the whole idea, right? Just to kind of fake like I was talking. But now that I'm going to begin, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, we gotcha.
All right. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulil Kareem. I first and foremost want to thank ISNA for this opportunity to get fellow educators to come together. May Allah bless you, because this has been a unique year. Now, being a principal is always, or administrator, always a unique year. There's always ups and downs, but with throwing in COVID, social injustices, elections, there was a lot more going on. So I wanted to kind of talk to us about and say, well, what can we learn from this, right? What as leaders, when we're going through these challenges, and it's so amazing because we have to all come together. So when ISNA's leadership, I want you guys all to take a few seconds to make dua for the ISNA leadership, that Allah increase them, protect them, guide them, give them the best in this world and the best in the hereafter, and bless their parents, their families, for letting them work and do these things voluntarily. Say Ameen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless ISNA for their work and giving us this platform for we having this opportunity to do the education forum. I also want you guys to give a good dua to also ISNA. May Allah bless them for getting the network of bringing educators together. Everyone is doing something, and when we come together, we can only get better and move forward. So I want to first just take a few minutes is to kind of go ahead and discuss what are some of the challenges that we face. So I wanted to kind of go ahead and kind of have a slide for us to realize how many different things were happening at one time. One was first the school closed. So that was the one big thing. Like, wait a minute, school is just closed in the middle. After 2 days, we just had to shut down the school. That by itself was a challenge, right? Then the idea was, if the school was closed, well, how in the world are we going to teach? So then the online classes was a concern that we would have to do and say, hey, what should we do here? Then after that, then you realize that, hey, we got the school has closed. We have the online classes. Then there was this worry about, wait a minute, because of COVID, people could be sick. So now then that fear of like, well, okay, people being sick and like, okay, what those challenges that we would have to do and kind of figure out like, okay, the school had closed. I have to figure out what we're going to do, hybrid, remote, online. Then, you know, the online classes that we're getting them training and so on and so forth was a discussion. Then if people will get sick and making sure that we're keeping our staff safe, our students safe, our community safe. But then there's a financial impact and say, wait a minute, if we are not going to be in person, we might not want to pay the whole full tuition, which I understand. Some parents were like worried about their own jobs and saying, well, can we get a discount for the last 3-4 months? So this was just happening in March, like in a matter of just 2-3 days, all these other factors are started to kind of creep up. So you see that becomes a challenge. Then you started realizing people were passing away in our states, around the world, in our community. People were getting sick, and then start realizing, well, this is not something from outside. Oh, you know, it's not ever going to happen in the United States. Now you start realizing this becomes more and more. Then with that aspect of now you start getting students' emotions, because now when you have students' emotions, they're going to be a conversation saying, wait a minute, wait, why can't we go to school? You have a preschool, kindergarten, first grader who might not understand. So wait a minute, we can't go to school anymore for 3-4 months now, 2 months. Or you have some kids who are now like their last year of graduation. Like, wait a minute, I'm not going to be able to finish off my school year. This is crazy, right? So you'll see that these kind of challenges that people are going to be having. Then you got teachers' emotions like, well, how are we going to teach? Wait, I'm not really good online. How are that? How am I going to assess? How am I going to? All these other factors kind of came into play. Then you had like the whole community munch and say, wait a minute, we're not even going to have our spiritual aspect of Jummah prayers, our regular prayers. With Ramadan's coming, we can't do iftar. So these were all these other factors that were coming in. Don't worry, I got some, we're going to go into what we learned from this, but I want us to kind of do a quick review. Then the other aspect was, and you could share this to the boards and say, look, this is all the stuff that we were going through. Then you had sports cancellations. And wait a minute, team sports, clubs, that was a frustration. Graduation cancellations. And say, wait, all these kids who are going to graduate, and wait, we're not going to have an 8th grade graduation. We're not going to have a high school graduation. Now, I know some of your schools don't even have a kindergarten graduation, right? So you'll see those challenges that people had. Summer programs that we do that generates us money for our school. That is gone. Vacations that people were going to go to, now they're not. Everyone's kind of stayed at home, and that kind of becomes a emotional effect. Even though we love our family, sometimes we need our own space. So you'll see those were factors. Social injustices also were happening at this time. right? Then you had the elections that came into place. Then you had, how do we grade? And you'll see that people were asking, like, I know some of you guys are getting flashbacks, like, oh my God, yes. Well, how are we going to grade? Is it going to be fair? Is it not going to be? Some kids were like worried, like, is it going to mess up my GPA? Is it not going to GPA? Is this fair? Kids might be cheating online. All these conversations that might have happened. Standardized tests in that last quarter, we weren't able to go ahead and give a standardized test, right? Our student support for struggling students was another factor that could happen. Or the loss of enrollment and say, wait a minute, we just lost some individuals. What about the fall? Is that going to happen? And some of that we started to realize in the fall, those became big problems, right? And students who are struggling. Staffing restrictions became another issue and say, wait a minute, well, can we keep everyone? Can we not? Some even, and just that last quarter and a half had to let some people go. Some people in the fall had to let people go just to balance their budget. CDC and state guidelines were another issue, making sure I'm keeping updated with those. Hybrid in-person were there. Vaccinations, which we're dealing with and making sure everyone has that. So there was a lot going on. And may Allah reward you guys. And I want you to realize, because all this is going on, there are things that we could learn for our future administration experience. And so I wanted to kind of go ahead and share the next slide that will hopefully kind of say, well, what were some things? And then I'm just going to finish, right? Because the idea is just to kind of remind us, first and foremost, that you guys are amazing individuals who have done some amazing things. But what are some things? Because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and anything that he tests us, he will not test us with anything that we can't bear, right? But there are things that when Allah puts in front of us, there are things that we should be able to reflect and learn from. And as administrators, when we want our kids to learn through life and life experience, through experiential learning sometimes, which we had an opportunity this year, when we want them to understand and reflect and say, well, let's look at the good, look at the glass half full and not empty, that's the same way we need to, as administrators, look at the same thing, or as teachers, or whatever we are as educators, because this is also, we are individuals who are servants of God, inshallah, that Allah rewards us with that great honor. But we have to realize these are things. So when school closed, what were some of the things that we learned? One was flexibility. We realized now we had to have the teachers be flexible and say, guess what? We're going to have to go remote. Parents, we need you to go in remote. We're going to have to make some adjustments. We had to do quick turnarounds. We had our school, I think on Friday, we closed. By Monday, we went on remote learning. We had to do training. So our teachers had to be like, hey guys, on Saturday and Sunday, we're going to have to do some training to get back online. Some might take a week, but those were things that kind of came into place. Innovation, we had to work with our tech team, our people online, our remote educational technology individuals, and saying, and our own teachers sharing and innovating and say, look, this is how we could do this. This is how we could do grading better. Let's look at that. Google Classroom, what else is the different programs that we had, you see individuals kind of learning through. Communication was another thing, making sure we inform parents what we are doing, how we're doing it, making sure, do we have the infrastructure? There were things that we learned that we realized that we were maybe weak at, and now we have to improve on, right? Online classes, we realized that, hey, maybe we never trained that much on online remote because we never thought this would happen. I say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us this pandemic because if this happened 15 years ago, we'd be in big trouble. But subhanAllah, even when Allah puts a situation, he had resources for us to make sure we could still move forward. Maybe it's not the ideal situation, but we were able to do that. So training in technology was another thing that we learned that we had that we could improve on and to get better at. Sicknesses. When people got sickness, what was that? Empathy. We realized that we have to look at families in a different way to see the situation, the fear that they have, that they could get sick. Our staff might get sick. So we had to make decisions, and even talking to our board and saying, well, what's the best thing here? We don't want to put our teachers in situations. We want our kids to learn. How can we balance it off? Right? The financial impact. What was it that we realized we had to be resourceful? Can we keep all our staff? Can we ask our parents to say, hey, can they give this much? Can we ask the teachers, hey, we're going to freeze our salaries for the same amount and not increase the salaries next year? There were conversations that we had to have and realize how important that having some buffer money is so important, that we as boards now realize we can't just go year by year and say, inshallah, we'll just do a fundraising balance our budget. But how do we go ahead and be more fiscal responsible is something that really brought up to us. And how do we be more resourceful in generating money from other places has become a big thing. The other area that you might have realized is depth, the empathy and counseling. Realize our schools need counselors. Are we building a relationship with counselors? Because now, due to this, we had individuals as administrators were going through our own issues, through our teachers might be having gone through their own issues, and even staff. So you'll see that those factors kind of play a big part. There you have the student emotions, right? When you have students' emotions, so what support do we have as a school? This is something that we have to look in the future. Now it's a great opportunity to talk to our board about counseling and who are our counselors, the communication that we have with our kids and our staff with our kids and building those relationships. The SEL, the social emotional learning now is so important, to realize that that is so important. Just not the cognitive. We've realized from March to now how important the social emotional aspect and how the sense of belonging in school is so important for kids, because now you see so many kids more down than ever before. We've had that at our school where we're talking to kids and counseling and parents like, they're feeling depressed, they're feeling down, and making sure that we have that. And what else is more important is for kids to understand faith. And now the idea is not just ibadah. As T schools, we need to make sure it's not just knowing the facts, but the idea of mu'amalat, that this is why we have the deed. When we have tough times, how do we deal with it? We're dealing with people, dealing with our own internal struggles that we have, and how faith is such an important thing. It's something that we, with our Islamic studies teachers, we have to have those conversations. Teacher emotions, same thing. Teachers also need support too, and they might need counseling. They also want to be communicating, what are we doing and how are we doing it? Why are we making this decision? And having those follow-up meetings with them. And important that even as staff, we have to focus on faith and saying, even that we teach in Islamic schools, we have to also realize that these are challenges and say, what are we doing to getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? When masjid closed, that takes away spirituality. And then that struggles and the communication that we will see. Sports and clubs took a big hit because that's where that sense of belonging. So the frustrations by kids, and I say, how do we deal with the kids' parents' frustration? Finding other opportunities. We had some teachers trying to looking at and say, well, here's an online competition. We could do this. We did our science Olympiad, but it was online. We did a science fair this year for the state, but it was online. And say, well, let's see what we could do, and how do we go ahead and still have some form of some games or some entertainment or some clubs that we could still do. Questions came about yearbook and saying, what about, are we going to do a yearbook? Are we not going to do a yearbook? And then trying to work out and say, hey, let's try to figure out and let's do an online yearbook this year. So those conversations that came into place. Then you start signing graduation cancellations. So we learned about improvising, right? I saw some schools that they went to the houses. Some did online, some did remote, some did a drive-through. Then this is where you realize how important when you have a team together and share ideas and look what's best, looking at what other schools have done, that idea of relationship building is something that we've learned. Summer programs, we realize how important summer programs are and parents and how it affected them. Vacations, we realize how much we need to have self-help, me time, and then reflection time. So this is something that we realize how important to having that time off or getting an opportunity to unwind and making sure that if we take care of ourselves, we could take care of others. The social injustices, this is something that played a big part. As schools, are we doing our part of equity? Are we talking about our social injustices and race issues even in our own community? This opened up our eyes a lot. Freedom, justice, faith, how important it is, and our kids to know it better, and not just kind of do that stamp kind of conversations. Making sure we understand our Black history. We're making understand we have a better relationship with the Black Muslim community, with all the Latin American, all these other people who have made and paved the way for many of us to have Islamic schools and to practice our deen, and our kids need to have a better understanding of our American history and the individuals that played a big part, and also Muslims who played a big part in making sure that support happens. Elections, the idea of how important now that us to do our civic duties, or that fear, the uncertainty of the election that had happened, and then the hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help when you do things right. So that became another conversation that we had. Then grading, that was one of the biggest issues. We learned about flexibility, research, and technology, looking at different ways that we could go ahead and learn. So these are other factors that also came up and made us understand that, wait a minute, we have to look at how our different ways to assess, not the regular. This made us to really start opening our minds to look at different ways of understanding and learning and disseminating information, but also reflecting and assessing these kids. Standardized testing, we realize that, hey, how important sometimes data is to show us if we're growing or we're not. Right. So, and then that whole flexibility and how are we going to test? Is it going to be a right Are the kids going to cheat or not, right? All this other things of kids showing their honesty and so on and so forth. So these were conversations. Students struggling, how important support staff for kids who are going through some tough time. And when we don't take care of that, how tough. So these were all these factors and challenges that you'll see. And one of the big things is that financial concern, that job security and paychecks of individuals, where we've had one or two Islamic schools who had to stop for a little bit. And then they had to reset themselves again. Those were conversations. And how do you deal with that? So it helps us. I look at it as we had a great reflection of our school and where we are in our systems and processes, and started to figure out where our holes are. And Allah let us figure out where our holes are and say, you know what, let's reevaluate, let's fix those holes, make sure we build a good, nice, strong fence and structure so we don't have that. And then you'll see these other four things: the staffing restrictions, tough conversations, the emotional feel, and say, well, we have to let someone go. How do we go? Which one we go? How important the evaluations were if we're going to make this person with that information go. The other one, CDC guidelines and changes and updates. Those were going. So how good are we? A relationship do we have with our health department, with our district, for us to get the shots? Some of the people, do we get our vaccinations, right? Like, we build those relationships where we can have those. Are we able to get that? Were we able to go ahead and implement those rules of CDC guidelines and realize how are we going to follow if we are going to go in person, making sure people going traveling, they come back, they're being honest, we're making sure social distance 6 feet, all these factors that came into place. And as things are changing, realizing we also have to be people who are kind of reassessing, reevaluating. And in the hybrid and in-person, the idea of how are we going to balance this and how do we make it better? But what we realize is that when challenges came, all of us put our minds together and help get answers and develop. And when you have groups like ISNA and ISLA and all these guys, when we're bringing our thoughts coming together, it goes a long way. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you guys. So I want us to just kind of realize, first and foremost, you make sure you give yourself a pat on the back. And we as educators need to make dua for each other and realize that we have resilience. And when we had these things come into play, in some areas, maybe we are still struggling, but this is where we are a family and we have to share our thoughts and ideas and come together. And yes, Allah did test us, but Allah tests us at a time where we are a family and enough resources online and remote that we could still share and talk to each other and go through this. Because if this happened 10, 15 years ago, we couldn't even have a ISNA conference remote. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I look at things that, yes, there was, but Allah also says, if you remember me, I'll remember you. So let's remember Allah in all of our times. Let's remember each other. May Allah bless everyone. I had to finish it exactly at 10:40. It's 10:39. I like to be on time. So may Allah reward all you guys. Great. Hopefully this week, may Allah bless all of us and make dua that Allah gives us the opportunity these 2 days to learn something that we could implement in our lives. And we are doing this only for the kids, for our deen. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the best in this world. And inshallah, all of us will be together and hereafter together. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum. Love you guys.